Welcome to Existential Drips.
Ludwig Wittgenstein is a philosopher who resists easy classification or interpretation, to the point that his close confidant and colleague Bertrand Russell was said to have misunderstood his early work. Strangely, though, in a sense, this is the heartbeat of Ludwig's work, demonstrating the slipperiness of words, how trying to hold together the world with language is doomed to fail. He was and remains the logical positivist hero and a mystical enigma. He is the philosopher who meticulously set out the limits of language in the Tractatus Logico Philosophicus, only to conclude with the famous dictum, whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent. This single line encapsulating the deep paradox of his thought, a rigorous analysis of meaning that ultimately gestures towards the ineffable. He was neither a materialist nor an idealist, not a complete skeptic nor a dogmatist. Instead, he saw philosophy as an activity of clarification. His early work an attempt to make clear what can be meaningfully said, and in doing so revealing the limits of human comprehension. In this essay, we will explore the mystical aspects of Wittgenstein's philosophy and how it speaks to what cannot be comprehended. Mysticism and analytic philosophy are not natural bedfellows. Analytic philosophy thrives on clarity, logic, and precision. Mysticism, by contrast, reveals that which cannot be spoken. It revels in that, in experiences beyond articulation. And yet Wittgenstein's philosophy straddles both worlds. His early work, the Tractatus, is often seen as a dry technical manual of logical atomism, dissecting the relationship between language and the world. But beneath this surface is something far more profound. It outlines the very limits of meaningful discourse while also suggesting that something beyond those limits lies. Wittgenstein hints at a realm that logic cannot penetrate, a realm that must be shown rather than said. He writes, "There are indeed things that cannot be put into words. They make themselves manifest. They are what is mystical." This is no casual remark, it is a radical statement. It suggests that the most important aspects of life, ethics, aesthetics, the meaning of existence, cannot be captured by scientific or logical language. They can only be hinted at, experienced, or felt. Wittgenstein was profoundly influenced by his own experiences of mysticism, deeply moved by the works of Schopenhauer, Tolstoy's Gospel in Brief, as well as Christian and Buddhist traditions. He saw philosophy not as an academic exercise, but as a form of spiritual struggle. His remarks on ethics and aesthetics, though brief, are loaded with an almost religious reverence. In a diary entry from 1916 during World War I, he wrote, "To believe in a God means to understand the question about the meaning of life. To believe in a God means to see that life has a meaning." This is not the language of a detached analyst, but of someone grappling with the deepest existential questions. For Wittgenstein, the mystical was not about supernatural entities or theological dogma, but about the very structure of reality and our place within it. He speaks of the feeling of the world as a limited whole, a phrase that resonates with religious awe. His mysticism is not a belief in the supernatural, but an acknowledgement of the limits of our understanding. The influence of Tolstoy is particularly striking. Wittgenstein carried the Gospel in Brief with him during his time as a soldier. This work, which distills the moral teachings of Christianity into a simple, unpretentious form, deeply shaped Wittgenstein's thinking about ethics and the inexpressible. He did not see religious belief as a set of empirical claims, but as a way of seeing the world. It was not something that could be debated, but that was real in being lived. Thus, here we see a pragmatism, that beneath the veneer of language is a terrain which must be walked in order to be true. Wittgenstein's fascination with mystical experience is also evident in his admiration for classical music and literature, most quintessentially his appreciation of Dostoevsky. He saw in these works a capacity to gesture toward which cannot be said, Unlike scientific language, which aims to describe the world, poetry and art show us something about our relationship to it, how it moves us and affects us. This aligns with his most famous notion that the limits of my language mean the limits of my world. What lies beyond those limits can only be hinted at in creative expression, in silence, or in deep contemplation. One of the most intriguing aspects of Wittgenstein's philosophy is its resonance with Eastern mystical traditions, particularly Zen Buddhism and Taoism. Though there is no direct evidence that Wittgenstein engaged with these traditions deeply, his thoughts share striking parallels with their core insights. Zen Buddhism emphasizes the limits of language and rational thought in grasping ultimate reality. The famous Zen koans, paradoxical riddles meant to transcend rational understanding, bear a resemblance to Wittgenstein's own efforts to push philosophy beyond what can be logically stated. The Zen master does not explain the ineffable, he gestures towards it. For example, one 12th century koan states, "If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him." This aligns with Wittgenstein's notion that the most profound truths are not said but suggested. Similarly, Taoism, particularly as expressed in the Tao Te Ching, aligns with Wittgenstein's philosophy of limits. Laozi famously begins his work with the line, "The Tao that can be spoken of is not the true Tao." This directly parallels Wittgenstein's insistence that the most important things in life cannot be put into words. The Taoist approach to wisdom often involves silence, paradox, and an acceptance of mystery, elements that strongly resonate with Wittgenstein's later philosophical outlook. This later work itself was a rejection of Wittgenstein's earlier work, demonstrating a man so concerned with clarity that he was willing to throw away the past. Echoing a previous allusion to what he had stated as, "My propositions serve as elucidations in the following way. Anyone who understands me eventually recognizes them as nonsensical, when he has used them as steps to climb beyond them. He must, so to speak, throw away the ladder after he has climbed up it. He must transcend these propositions, and then he will see the world aright." Moreover, the Taoist emphasis on non-action, Wu Wei, finds a surprising parallel in Wittgenstein's later work. Philosophical Investigations rejects the idea of philosophy as a system-building enterprise. Instead, it embraces a kind of intellectual quietism, an acceptance that some things must simply be left as they are. In this sense, Wittgenstein's maturer philosophy embodies a Taoist sensibility, resisting the impulse to impose rigid conceptualizations on a world that defies total comprehension. While Wittgenstein was shaped primarily by Western philosophical traditions, his affinity with Zen and Taoist perspectives suggests a broader mystical sensibility. Both traditions, like Wittgenstein, recognize the limits of language and point toward a deeper, ineffable reality. And so, science for Wittgenstein is powerful but not omnipotent. The Tractatus is often mistakenly interpreted as a scientific manifesto, but its actual message is far more subversive. Science describes facts, it tells us how things are, but it cannot tell us why things are, nor can it touch the realm of values, meaning, or existence itself. So therefore, the most important things that matter to us, well, they cannot be spoken of. Wittgenstein claims the sense of the world must lie outside the world. This means that no scientific theory, no empirical discovery can tell us why the world exists at all, nor why life has meaning. Science operates within the limits of what can be said, but the most important things in life, the things that give it depth, reside beyond those limits. So Wittgenstein's philosophy is both an act of destruction and an act of reverence. He dismantles the illusions of total knowledge, showing us the boundaries of thought. But in doing so, he reveals something deeper, that the most profound aspects of life are not things we can state, but things we must experience: meaning, beauty, love, ethics. His philosophy is mystical not because it offers supernatural explanations, but because it acknowledges the limits of explanation itself. He does not provide us with answers. He clears the way for us to see the world afresh. In the end, he is not a philosopher of solutions, but of silence. And in that silence, something unspeakable, yet deeply significant shines through. And what that is, well, he would suggest, that is for you to discover. Thank you very much for listening, and